My name is Jake Morrison, and I'm about to tell you a story that still makes my blood boil 5 years later. I was a decorated Army logistics officer, 35 years old, 8 years married to Michelle, father to Emma and Tyler. I thought I had a solid life. I was wrong. The moment I walked into my house after 6 months of deployment and found Michelle pointing my own service weapon at my chest, everything I believed shattered. 4 strange men scattered through my living room, my wife in a dress I'd never seen, my kids shipped off so she could party, and then that gun in her shaking hands. Most people would have crumbled, would have retreated, called it a loss, tried to move on quietly. I didn't. I documented everything. I used every legal tool available. I made sure Michelle faced real consequences for what she did, not just to me, but to our children. 7 years in prison. That's what she got. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, you'll understand why I fought back the way I did. And honestly, I'd do it all over again. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from. And make sure to subscribe because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. I'd been counting down the days for 6 months straight. 183 days in the Middle East, dust, heat, and endless logistics coordination that kept supply lines running for thousands of troops. Every night in that cramped bunk, I'd picture coming home to Michelle, Emma, and Tyler. That mental image kept me sane through the chaos. The transport landed 3 days early. Some logistical miracle freed up space on an earlier flight, and I jumped at the chance. I didn't call ahead, I wanted to surprise them. I pictured Emma's face lighting up, Tyler launching himself into my arms, Michelle crying happy tears. God, I was naive. It was 9:30 p.m. on a Friday when I pulled into our driveway. Still in uniform, duffel bag slung over my shoulder, I noticed every light in the house blazing. Music thumped from inside, loud, bass-heavy club music that made the windows vibrate. My stomach dropped. Michelle hated loud music. She always complained about the neighbors. I unlocked the front door with my key and stepped inside. 4 men I'd never seen before were scattered throughout my living room. 2 sprawled on my couch with beer bottles in hand. 1 leaned against the wall near the kitchen laughing at something. Another sat at my kitchen table scrolling through his phone. Beer bottles covered every surface. The coffee table, the kitchen counter, the end tables. And Michelle. She stood near the couch wearing a tight black dress that hugged every curve. Something I'd definitely never seen before. Her makeup was done up like she was going clubbing. She was laughing, head thrown back, while a tall bearded guy had his hand resting on her lower back. The music cut off abruptly when they noticed me standing in the doorway. Everyone froze. "Jake?" Michelle's face drained of all color. Her voice came out strangled. "What are you? You're not supposed to be home until Monday." Clearly. I dropped my duffel bag on the floor. My voice came out ice cold, but inside I was a volcano ready to explode. Who the hell are these people? These are friends. We were just friends? I stepped further into the room. The bearded guy moved his hand away from Michelle's back real quick. "Where are Emma and Tyler?" "At my mom's. They're fine." "Jake, you're overreacting." "Overreacting?" I laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. I come home after 6 months serving my country to find my wife dressed like she's hitting the clubs with 4 random men in our house, and I'm overreacting? The bearded guy stood up. He was tall, probably 6'2", with a thick beard, and the kind of confident posture that said he wasn't used to being challenged. "Hey man, maybe you should sit down." I didn't raise my voice, but the command in it, honed by years of military leadership, made him freeze mid-sentence. "You're in my house, you don't get to talk." He sat back down. Michelle's face flushed red. "Don't you dare speak to my friends like that. You think you can just walk in here and... Your friends?" I was advancing toward her now, and I could see everyone getting nervous. Good. They should be nervous. "Tell me, Michelle, how long has this been going on? These little parties while I'm deployed? That's none of your business." She was getting defensive now, angry. Perfect. Angry people make mistakes. "You're never here. I deserve to have a life." "A life? You're a mother. Our kids are supposed to be your life. Instead, you shipped them off so you could do... What exactly?" I gestured at the beer bottles, the 4 men, her dress. This? The bearded guy spoke up again. Dude, we were just hanging out. I told you to shut up. I turned back to Michelle, my voice dropping lower. More dangerous. These guys need to leave. Now. No! Michelle stood her ground and I saw something flash in her eyes. Something desperate and dangerous. This is my house too, and they're staying. Michelle. I kept my voice level, but firm. Don't make this worse than it already is. Worse? Her voice went shrill. You want to see worse? She stormed past me, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. I heard her footsteps heading toward our bedroom. Every alarm bell in my head started ringing at once. Michelle, what are you? I followed her down the hallway. The four guys were already scrambling toward the front door. I could hear them moving, muttering to each other, sensing the situation spiraling. Michelle came back out of the bedroom. She was holding my Glock 19, my service pistol, the one I kept locked in the safe in our bedroom closet. She pointed it directly at my chest. The entire house went silent except for the sound of the front door opening as the four men fled into the night. Get out, Michelle said. Her hands were shaking, but her finger was near the trigger. Get out of this house right now, Jake. Every muscle in my body coiled, but I forced myself to remain calm. Michelle, put the gun down right now. No. Tears were streaming down her face, smearing her makeup. You don't get to come in here and ruin everything. This is my life. Get out. You're pointing a loaded weapon at your husband, the father of your children. Do you understand what you're doing right now? I said, get out. I slowly reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, held it up where she could see it. I'm calling the police, I said, my voice deadly calm. You have 3 seconds to put that gun down or you're going to prison. You wouldn't. 1. Jake, don't. 2. Her hands were shaking harder now. The gun wavered. 3. I dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? My name is Captain Jake Morrison, I said into the phone, keeping my eyes locked on Michelle and that gun. I'm active duty Army and my wife just pointed a loaded firearm at me in my home. I need police at 2847 Maple Drive immediately. Michelle's face transformed from defiant to panicked in an instant. No, she screamed. Hang up. Jake, hang up the phone. The 911 operator's calm voice came through. Sir, is the weapon still pointed at you? She lowered it, I said, watching as Michelle's arms dropped to her sides, the Glock hanging loosely in her right hand. But she's still holding it. Officers are en route. Stay on the line with me. Can you safely move away from her? Yes. I backed toward the front door, never taking my eyes off Michelle. She was crying now, mascara running down her face in black streaks. Jake, please, Michelle begged. Please call them off. I didn't mean it, I was just scared. Scared? I kept my voice level for the operator, but cold. You pulled a gun on me, Michelle, in our home. I wasn't going to shoot. I just wanted you to leave. That's called aggravated assault. The police will be here in a few minutes. Through the phone, I could hear sirens in the distance. Michelle heard them too. Her crying intensified, turning into something close to hyperventilation. Jake, please. Think about Emma and Tyler. Think about our family. I am thinking about them. That's exactly why I'm doing this. The sirens got louder. Red and blue lights began flashing through the front windows. Michelle set the gun down on the coffee table, finally, and collapsed onto the couch, sobbing into her hands. 2 police cruisers pulled up. 4 officers approached the house, hands near their weapons. I stepped out onto the porch, hands visible, phone still to my ear. I'm Captain Morrison, I told the first officer, a stocky guy in his 40s with graying hair. I'm the one who called. My wife is inside. She set the gun down. It's on the coffee table in the living room. The operator confirmed she was ending the call as the officers entered. 2 went to Michelle, 1 secured the Glock, and the 4th, a younger female officer, took me aside to get my statement. I walked her through everything. Coming home early from deployment, finding 4 strange men in my house, Michelle in that dress, our kids shipped off to her mother's, the confrontation, Michelle pulling my service weapon and pointing it at my chest, the witnesses, those 4 men who'd scattered, plus the neighbors. Right on cue, 2 of my neighbors appeared. Mrs. Chen from next door and Mr. Rodriguez from across the street. Both had heard the shouting, the music suddenly cutting off, the commotion. "We heard yelling," Mrs. Chen told the officers. "And someone screamed 'get out' multiple times. It didn't sound right." "There were several men running out of the house," Mr. Rodriguez added. "They jumped into 2 cars and took off fast. We almost called the police ourselves." Inside, I could hear Michelle giving her version to the other officers. Her voice was high-pitched, desperate. She was claiming she was scared, that I'd startled her, that she didn't know I was coming home. The officers weren't buying it. The stocky officer came back out. "Captain Morrison, based on witness statements and your account, we're placing your wife under arrest for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. We'll need you to come to the station tomorrow to give a formal statement." I nodded. Understood. They brought Michelle out in handcuffs. She was still crying, but now there was rage, mixed with the tears. She looked at me with pure hatred. "You're ruining everything," she screamed as they guided her toward the cruiser. "I hate you. I'll make sure you never see those kids again. Never." I just stood there, watching, cold, calculating. Every word out of her mouth was more ammunition for what was coming. They put her in the back of the squad car. The lights reflected off her tear-stained face as they drove away. The officers finished up taking photos of the scene, bagging my Glock as evidence. They cleared out around 11:30 p.m., leaving me alone in the wreckage of my marriage. I walked through the house, documenting everything with my phone camera. Beer bottles everywhere. I counted 19 of them. The black dress Michelle had been wearing, her purse with makeup and perfume I'd never seen before. Evidence of a life I knew nothing about. I sat on the couch around midnight, still in my uniform. The house felt foreign now, tainted. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother-in-law, Carol. "Michelle didn't pick up the kids. Is everything okay?" I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I typed back. "There was an incident. I'll pick them up tomorrow morning. Kids are fine. We'll explain when I see you." I set the phone down and started making a mental list. Everything I needed to do in order. Call Carol in the morning, pick up Emma and Tyler, contact my lawyer, notify my commander, secure the bank accounts, change the locks, file for divorce, file for emergency custody, protect my children. Michelle had just handed me everything I needed to destroy her in court, and I was going to use every single piece of it. I finally changed out of my uniform and lay in bed, but I didn't sleep. I couldn't. My mind was already 3 steps ahead, planning every move like the military operation it had become. Michelle thought she'd won something by building her secret life, by trying to force me out at gunpoint. She had no idea what she'd just started. I called Carol at 8 a.m. sharp Saturday morning. I'd been up since 5, running on adrenaline and black coffee. "Jake?" Her voice was uncertain, worried. "What happened?" "Your text said there was an incident?" There was. I kept my tone measured. "Michelle and I had a confrontation. She's been arrested. I need to pick up Emma and Tyler this morning." "Arrested?" Carol's voice shot up an octave. "For what? Jake, what's going on?" "I'd rather discuss it in person. I'll be there in 45 minutes. I didn't give her time to argue. I hung up, grabbed my keys, and headed out. The drive to Carol's house felt surreal. Less than 12 hours ago, I'd been walking into my home expecting hugs and welcome home banners. Now I was picking up my kids while their mother sat in a jail cell. Carol met me at the door. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her gray hair was messy, her face lined with worry. "Jake, please tell me what's happening." "Michelle pointed a gun at me last night. My gun, in our home. In front of witnesses." Carol's hand flew to her mouth. No, that can't be. The police have the weapon. They have witness statements. It happened, Carol. But why would she? That's between Michelle and me. Where are the kids?" Emma and Tyler were eating cereal in Carol's kitchen, still in their pajamas. When they saw me, both of them lit up. "Daddy!" Tyler launched himself at me, and I caught him, holding him tight. Emma wrapped her arms around my waist. "You're home early," Emma said, grinning up at me. "Mom said you wouldn't be back until Monday. I wanted to surprise you guys." I kissed the top of her head. "How would you feel about coming home with me today?" "Yes." Tyler pumped his fist. "Can we get pancakes?" "Absolutely. Go get dressed, both of you." After the kids ran upstairs, Carol grabbed my arm. Jake, please. She's my daughter. What's going to happen to her? She made her choices, Carol. Now she's facing the consequences. But the children will be with me, where they're safe. I loaded Emma and Tyler into my car an hour later, their overnight bags in the trunk. They chattered the whole way home about what they'd done at Grandma's house, completely oblivious to the storm brewing around them. I made them pancakes like I promised. Set them up with cartoons in the living room, after I'd cleaned up all evidence of last night's party. I'd bagged the beer bottles, wiped down surfaces, made the house look normal again. While they watched TV, I made phone calls. First, my commander. Lieutenant Colonel Harris answered on the second ring. Morrison? You're supposed to be on post-deployment leave. Sir, I need to report an incident. I walked him through it. The assault, the arrest, the situation with my kids. Harris listened without interrupting. Jesus, Morrison. Are you all right? Yes, sir, but I'm requesting emergency leave to handle custody arrangements and legal proceedings. Granted. Take whatever time you need. Keep me posted. Thank you, sir. Next, I called my lawyer. Richard Chen had handled our wills and power of attorney documents when I deployed. Now I needed him for something much bigger. Richard, I need an emergency meeting Monday morning. First thing, I'm filing for divorce and emergency custody. What happened? I gave him the abbreviated version. Richard whistled low. You have documentation? Police reports, witness statements, 911 recording, and photos. Everything. Bring it all Monday. 8 a.m. We'll file immediately. Sunday was devoted to the kids. I took them to their favorite park, pushed Tyler on the swings, watched Emma go down the slide 50 times. Normal dad stuff. The kind of stability they were going to need. But my mind never stopped planning. Every legal move, every strategic decision. This was a campaign now, and I was executing it with military precision. Monday morning, I dropped Emma and Tyler at Carol's again. She was confused but agreed to watch them. Then I met Richard at his office with a folder full of documentation. Richard reviewed everything, his expression growing darker with each page. This is airtight, Jake. Aggravated assault, witnesses, her threats about denying you access to the kids. We can file for emergency custody today. Do it. We spent 3 hours drafting papers. Petition for divorce citing Michelle's assault and irreconcilable differences. Emergency motion for custody based on Michelle's violent behavior and endangerment. Request for temporary orders securing the house and assets. Richard filed everything electronically by 2 p.m. Monday. Wednesday, we filed for a restraining order. Richard argued that Michelle's threat, "You'll never see those kids again," combined with the assault, made her a clear danger. The judge granted it. Thursday, I changed every lock on the house, had a locksmith come out and rekey everything. Michelle's keys were worthless now. I also went to the bank, moved half our joint savings into a new account in my name only. Secured our assets so Michelle couldn't drain everything out of spite. Friday afternoon, Richard called with news. Michelle made bail. Her mother mortgaged her house, $50,000. Michelle's being released within the hour. I felt my jaw tighten. She'll come to the house. She has a restraining order. If she does, she violates it. Richard, you don't know her like I do. She'll come anyway. She always acts on emotion, never logic. Then document it. Record everything. Call the police immediately. I hung up and prepared. Set my phone to record. Checked that the new locks were solid. Then I waited. Michelle would come. I knew she would, and when she did, I'd have her arrested again. Michelle showed up at 7:13 p.m. I'd just finished putting Emma and Tyler to bed when I heard the pounding on the front door. Jake! Her voice was shrill, echoing through the quiet neighborhood. Open this door right now. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Walked to the front door but didn't open it. Michelle, you have a restraining order. You need to leave. Those are my children in there. You stole them from me. You ruined my life. More pounding. The door shook with each hit. I'm calling the police. Leave now, or you'll be arrested again. I don't care, she was screaming now. You can't keep me from my babies. You're a controlling psychopath. Everyone's going to know what you did to me. I dialed 911 for the second time in a week. Meanwhile, upstairs, I heard Emma's door open. Daddy? Her small voice drifted down. Why is Mommy yelling? My heart broke. Go back to your room, sweetheart. Put on your headphones and watch something on your tablet. Everything's fine. 911, what's your emergency? This is Jake Morrison at 2847 Maple Drive. My wife is violating a restraining order. She's pounding on my door, screaming, refusing to leave. Michelle must have heard me through the door because her tone shifted. Jake, please just let me see them. 5 minutes. That's all I want. Officers are en route, the dispatcher said. I stayed on the line, recording everything. Michelle alternated between rage and pleading, threatening to take me to court, to expose me, to make sure I suffered, then begging to see the kids, promising she'd changed, swearing it was all a misunderstanding. The police arrived in 6 minutes. Same stocky officer from Friday night. His nameplate read, Martinez. Mrs. Morrison, Officer Martinez said, approaching the porch. You need to step away from the house. He took my children. Michelle whirled on him. He's keeping them from me. Ma'am, you have a restraining order. You're not allowed within 500 feet of this residence. You're in violation. I don't care about some piece of paper. Those are my kids. Turn around and put your hands behind your back. No, you can't do this. Jake, tell them. Tell them you'll drop it. Officer Martinez wasn't asking anymore. He and his partner moved in and Michelle tried to run. She actually tried to bolt down the driveway. They caught her in 3 steps. She screamed the entire time they cuffed her, screamed that I was destroying her, that this was all my fault, that she'd make me pay. I stood in the doorway, phone recording everything, face expressionless. Captain Morrison, Officer Martinez said as they loaded Michelle into the cruiser. You'll need to come by the station tomorrow for another statement. I'll be there. Michelle spent another night in jail. But this time it took Carol 3 days to scrape together bail money again. Michelle had already drained Carol's resources. The following week, Michelle's public defender, a tired-looking woman named Sandra Reyes, contacted Richard trying to negotiate on both cases, the criminal charges and the divorce. My client was under extreme stress, Sandra argued during a conference call Richard had me listen in on. Captain Morrison came home unexpectedly after 6 months away. Mrs. Morrison was startled, frightened. She reacted poorly but never intended harm. Richard's response was surgical. Your client pointed a loaded weapon at a deployed service member. We have 911 recordings, multiple witnesses, and police reports. Then she violated a restraining order, which we also have documented. There's nothing to negotiate. Surely Captain Morrison doesn't want to put the mother of his children in prison. What Captain Morrison wants is full custody of his children, who were endangered by your client's behavior. Mrs. Morrison shipped them off repeatedly so she could host parties with strange men while her husband served overseas. That's a mischaracterization. Is it? We'll present evidence in court. Let the judge decide. The divorce proceedings kicked into high gear. Michelle's lawyer tried arguing for 50-50 custody despite the pending criminal charges. They claimed Michelle was a devoted mother who'd made one mistake in a moment of panic. Richard buried them. He presented a timeline of the past 6 months, showed how many times Emma and Tyler had been dropped at Carol's house on Friday nights, documented Michelle's declining communication with me during deployment, presented the assault evidence, the restraining order violation, Michelle's threats. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Patricia Warner, was not impressed. Mrs. Morrison, Judge Warner said during a hearing 3 weeks after the arrest, you pointed a weapon at your husband. You violated a protective order. You've shown a pattern of prioritizing your social life over your children's well-being. I'm granting Captain Morrison primary physical custody, pending resolution of the criminal case. Michelle sobbed in the courtroom. Her lawyer tried to object, but Judge Warner shut it down. Mrs. Morrison will have supervised visitation every other weekend, 2 hours per visit, no overnight stays. That should have been devastating enough. But then 2 months after that Friday night, Richard called with something that changed everything. Jake, we went through financial discovery. I found something interesting. What? Your wife withdrew $23,000 in cash over 6 months. Small amounts, nothing that triggered alerts, but it adds up. Where did that money go? My blood ran cold. I don't know. Neither does her lawyer. I asked them to account for it. They stumbled through some excuse about household expenses but couldn't provide receipts or documentation. She was planning something. That's my thought, too. I've got an investigator digging deeper. If she was hiding assets or planning to leave, that's financial misconduct. We can use it. I sat in Richard's office the next afternoon reviewing bank statements. $23,000. Gone. Withdrawn in amounts between $200 and $800. Always in cash. Always from different ATMs. Michelle had been building an escape fund. She'd been planning to leave me all along. Richard called 3 weeks after discovering the financial discrepancies. It was a Tuesday evening and I was helping Tyler with a dinosaur puzzle when my phone rang. "Jake, we need to talk." My investigator found something. I moved to the kitchen out of earshot from the kids. What did he find? Text messages, social media posts. Your wife was having an affair. I gripped the phone tighter. I'd suspected, but having it confirmed felt like a punch to the gut. With who? The bearded guy from that night, Derek Paulson. It went on for 4 months, but that's not the worst part. There's worse? Michelle was building a narrative, Jake. She told multiple friends and family members that you were abusive, controlling, that she was afraid of you. She was planning to file for divorce while you were deployed, claim domestic violence, and go for full custody in the house. The kitchen suddenly felt too small. She what? My investigator found Facebook messages to her sister, texts to friends. She was setting you up. The $23,000 was her escape fund. She was going to blindside you, file while you were overseas, get temporary custody before you could respond, paint herself as a victim fleeing abuse. I leaned against the counter, processing. The gun. Exactly. You came home 3 days early. She panicked. Her whole plan fell apart, and she reacted emotionally instead of strategically. She revealed her true nature in front of witnesses. Send me everything. The documents arrived in my email an hour later. I read them after putting Emma and Tyler to bed, my anger building with each page. Text to Michelle's sister Karen. I can't do this anymore. He's so controlling. Always checking the accounts, questioning where I go. I'm scared of what he'll do when he gets back. Facebook message to her friend Beth. I've been talking to a lawyer. I'm going to file while he's deployed. It's the only way I can get out safely. Text to Derek. Miss you. Can't wait until this is over and we can be together for real. Every word was a lie. Every message a manipulation. She'd been manufacturing evidence of abuse while I was 7,000 miles away, keeping supply lines running, serving my country. Richard used this ammunition to devastate Michelle in divorce proceedings. The discovery hearing was brutal. Michelle's lawyer, a younger guy named Tom Bradley who'd replaced Sandra on the civil case, tried to maintain that Michelle was simply unhappy in the marriage. Richard pulled out the text messages. Mrs. Morrison told multiple people that Captain Morrison was abusive and controlling. Yet there's no police reports, no medical records, no witnesses, no evidence whatsoever, because it never happened. She fabricated it. Tom shifted uncomfortably. My client was expressing her feelings. Her feelings or her strategy? Because we also have evidence of a 4-month affair and $23,000 in hidden cash withdrawals. This wasn't a woman fleeing abuse. This was a woman planning to destroy her husband's reputation while he served overseas. Judge Warner reviewed the evidence, her expression growing colder by the minute. Mrs. Morrison, did you or did you not tell your sister that you feared for your safety? Michelle sat there, trapped. I was emotional. I didn't mean yes or no. Yes, but was Captain Morrison ever physically violent with you? No, but emotional abuse. Did he ever threaten you? Not directly, but Mrs. Morrison, you fabricated abuse allegations against a deployed service member while conducting an extramarital affair and hiding marital assets. This court takes a very dim view of such behavior. The call started that week. First from Carol, crying into the phone. Jake, please, she made mistakes, but she's my daughter. She doesn't deserve to lose everything. Carol, she pointed a gun at me. She lied about me being abusive. She was planning to take my kids and destroy my reputation. But if you show mercy now, maybe the judge... No. I kept my voice firm. Michelle made her choices, now she lives with them. Michelle's father Paul sent emails. Long, rambling messages about family, forgiveness, and how I was being vindictive. How Michelle was troubled but not evil. How I should think about what this would do to Emma and Tyler. I deleted them without responding. Richard filed updated motions including the affair evidence and false abuse allegations. The financial misconduct, the manufactured narrative. Everything painted a picture of calculated deception. 4 months after that Friday night, the divorce was finalized. I got primary custody of Emma and Tyler. Michelle got supervised visitation every other weekend, 2 hours per session. I got the house. Michelle got debt. I got 70% of the marital assets because of her financial misconduct. The hidden $23,000, money spent on the affair, cash withdrawals she couldn't account for. Michelle got stuck with her legal bills for both the divorce and the criminal case, plus half the credit card debt. When the judge read the final decree, Michelle just stared at the table. No tears this time, just hollow defeat. "Mrs. Morrison," Judge Warner said, "you brought this upon yourself through a pattern of deception, infidelity, and violence. I hope you use your supervised visitation to rebuild some relationship with your children, because right now you've lost nearly everything else." Michelle walked out of the courtroom without looking at me. Carol tried to follow her, but Michelle shook her off. 2 weeks later, Michelle's criminal trial began. And that's when things got even more satisfying. I showed up to the courthouse in my Army dress uniform. Richard suggested it, and he was right. The visual impact was undeniable. A decorated officer in full military dress testifying against the woman who'd threatened him with his own weapon. The prosecution was led by Assistant District Attorney Marcus Webb, a sharp guy in his 40s who'd been aggressive from the start. He wanted to make an example of Michelle's case. "This isn't just assault," Marcus told me before trial. "This is assault on a service member, in his own home after months of deployment. The jury's going to hate her." He was right. The courthouse was packed when I arrived that Monday morning. Michelle's criminal trial had drawn attention. Local news had picked up the story of a military officer assaulted by his wife after returning from deployment. I walked through the courthouse doors in my dress uniform, medals on my chest, posture parade ground perfect. People turned to look. Some whispered. I kept my eyes forward and found Marcus Webb waiting outside the courtroom. "Ready?" Marcus asked. "Absolutely." The jury selection had taken 2 days, 12 jurors, 6 men and 6 women. Average age maybe 45. Marcus told me he'd screened carefully, looking for people who respected military service, who had strong views on domestic violence, who wouldn't buy manufactured sob stories. Sandra Reyes sat at the defense table with Michelle. Michelle wore a conservative blue dress, minimal makeup, her hair pulled back. The picture of a wronged woman. It made my stomach turn. Judge Harold Chen, no relation to my lawyer Richard, called the court to order. Marcus's opening statement was devastating. He walked the jury through my 6 months of deployment, the sacrifice of military families, the anticipation of homecoming, then the betrayal, 4 strange men in my house, my children shipped away, my wife in club attire. And when Captain Morrison asked the men to leave his own home, Marcus said, his voice rising, Michelle Morrison went to the bedroom, retrieved her husband's service weapon, and pointed a loaded Glock 19 at his chest. She threatened him. She told him to get out of his own house. And when he said he was calling the police, she didn't lower the weapon. She kept it pointed at him until she heard those sirens. The jury was riveted. Sandra's opening tried to paint Michelle as frightened and overwhelmed. Michelle Morrison made a terrible mistake in a moment of panic. Her husband appeared unexpectedly after 6 months away. She was startled, confused, and reacted out of fear, not malice. It sounded weak even as she said it. The prosecution's case unfolded methodically over 2 days. First, the 911 recording. The courtroom went silent as my voice came through the speakers, calm and controlled. My wife just pointed a loaded firearm at me in my home. Then Michelle's voice in the background, shrill and panicked. "Hang up. Jake, hang up the phone." Officer Martinez testified next, describing the scene when he arrived. Captain Morrison was composed, professional. Mrs. Morrison was highly emotional, intoxicated, and became combative when we informed her she was under arrest. The 2 neighbors testified. Mrs. Chen described the loud music, the 4 men running from the house, the screaming. Mr. Rodriguez corroborated everything. Then it was my turn. I took the stand, placed my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. Marcus walked me through my background: 8 years in the Army, logistics officer, decorated service record, 2 combat deployments. Captain Morrison, tell the jury about your marriage to Michelle. We were married for 8 years. We have 2 children together, Emma and Tyler. I thought we had a solid marriage. I was wrong. Tell us about your deployment. I described 6 months in the Middle East. The heat, the danger, the isolation. Coming home to emails that grew sparse over time. Trusting Michelle completely. And you came home 3 days early? Yes, sir. I caught an earlier transport. I wanted to surprise my family. What did you find when you arrived home? I walked through it. Every detail. The music. The 4 men. Michelle's dress. The beer bottles. My children gone. And then what happened? I asked the men to leave. Michelle refused. She became agitated and went to our bedroom. When she came back, she was holding my Glock 19. Your service weapon? Yes, sir. Which I kept locked in a safe in our bedroom closet. What did Mrs. Morrison do with that weapon? She pointed it at my chest. Her finger was near the trigger. She told me to get out of the house. Were you afraid? Yes, sir. Michelle was intoxicated, emotional, and holding a loaded weapon. Anyone with firearms training knows that's when accidental discharges happen. I feared for my life. Sandra's cross-examination tried to break me. Captain Morrison, you have extensive weapons training, correct? Yes, ma'am. You've handled weapons in combat situations? Yes, ma'am. So you knew your wife wouldn't actually shoot you? No, ma'am. I knew my wife was drunk, emotional, and had her finger near the trigger of a loaded weapon. Training doesn't make you immune to bullets, it makes you recognize danger. But you remained calm during the incident. I'm trained to remain calm in combat situations. That doesn't mean I wasn't in genuine danger. If anything, my training told me exactly how dangerous that situation was. Sandra tried a different angle. Isn't it true you were angry about finding men in your house? I was angry about the betrayal. But I didn't threaten anyone. I didn't pull a weapon. Michelle did that. You called the police very quickly. Because my wife pointed a gun at me. That's exactly when you're supposed to call the police. Sandra had no response to that. The prosecution rested after presenting evidence of the affair, the financial deception, Michelle's planned false abuse narrative. Marcus was building a picture of premeditation, showing that the gun incident wasn't isolated panic, but the culmination of months of calculated deception that exploded when I came home early. Michelle took the stand in her own defense. It was a mistake. She cried. She apologized. She claimed she never meant to hurt me, that she was just overwhelmed and scared. Marcus destroyed her on cross-examination. Mrs. Morrison, you told your sister that Captain Morrison was abusive, correct? I was emotional. Yes or no? Yes. Was he ever abusive? Not physically, but yes or no, Mrs. Morrison? Did Captain Morrison ever physically harm you? No. Did he ever threaten you? No. So you lied to your sister about being in an abusive relationship? I didn't mean. You fabricated abuse allegations against a deployed service member. Yes or no? Michelle's voice was barely a whisper. Yes. You were having an affair with Derek Paulson for 4 months. Yes or no? Yes. You withdrew $23,000 in cash without telling your husband. Yes or no? Yes. You were planning to file for divorce while Captain Morrison was deployed. Yes or no? Yes. And when he came home 3 days early and disrupted your plans, you pulled a gun on him. I was scared. Scared of what, Mrs. Morrison? Scared of being caught? Sandra objected, but the damage was done. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. When they filed back in, I knew. You could see it in their faces. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman stood. We have, Your Honor. We find the defendant guilty of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Michelle's face crumbled. Carol sobbed in the gallery. Paul sat stone-faced. I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Justice. The sentencing hearing was scheduled 2 weeks after the guilty verdict. I had a decision to make: provide a victim impact statement or stay silent. Richard advised me to speak. The judge wants to hear from you. This is your chance to tell her what Michelle's actions cost you. Marcus agreed. Victim impact statements carry weight, especially from someone like you. Military, credible, sympathetic. You want maximum penalty? This is how you get it. I spent a week writing it, editing, making sure every word counted. The courtroom was fuller than I expected on sentencing day. Carol and Paul sat in the front row behind Michelle. A few of Michelle's friends scattered in the gallery, some reporters, and me alone on the prosecution side, back in my dress uniform. Judge Chen called the court to order. We're here for sentencing in the matter of the state versus Michelle Morrison. Does the defense wish to present anything before sentencing? Sandra stood. Yes, Your Honor. We'd like to call Carol Henderson. Carol took the stand, already crying. She testified about Michelle's childhood, her struggles, how Michelle was a good mother who'd made one terrible mistake. Please, Your Honor, Carol begged, her voice breaking. She needs help, not prison. She needs therapy. She has 2 small children who need their mother. Those children have their father, Judge Chen said flatly, who Mrs. Morrison assaulted. Paul didn't testify, but Sandra read a letter from him. Standard stuff about Michelle being troubled but redeemable, deserving of a second chance. Then Michelle spoke. She stood, hands clasped in front of her, tears streaming down her face. Your Honor, I know what I did was wrong. I was overwhelmed, I was scared, and I made the worst mistake of my life. I never meant to hurt Jake. I love him. I love our children. I'm so sorry. She looked directly at me. Jake, please forgive me. I know I don't deserve it, but please. For Emma and Tyler. I kept my face neutral. Empty. Judge Chen turned to me. Captain Morrison, would you like to make a statement? I stood and walked to the podium, pulled out my written statement. The courtroom went silent. Your Honor, 6 months ago I was serving my country overseas. I was doing my duty, sacrificing time with my family, living in dangerous conditions, all because I believed in something bigger than myself. And the entire time I trusted that my family was safe at home, that my wife was caring for our children, that I had something good to come back to. I paused, letting it sink in. When I walked through my door that Friday night, everything I believed shattered. My wife had been living a secret life, conducting an affair, hosting parties while shipping our children off to her mother, stealing money from our accounts. And worst of all, she'd been telling people I was abusive, manufacturing a false narrative to justify abandoning me and taking everything. I could have retreated that night, could have left, could have tried to de-escalate, but Michelle didn't give me that option. She pulled a weapon, my weapon, and pointed it at my chest. She threatened me in my own home. The place where I should have been safest in the world became a combat zone because of her choices. My voice hardened. Michelle Morrison is not a victim. She's not troubled or confused or deserving of sympathy. She's a manipulator who got caught. She's someone who betrayed her husband, endangered him with deadly force, and only showed remorse when facing consequences. I'm a father now raising 2 children alone, explaining to them why their mother isn't around, getting them therapy to deal with trauma she caused. And I'm doing it while Michelle's family launches campaigns claiming I'm the villain. I looked directly at Michelle. Your Honor, I request maximum penalty, not for revenge, but for justice, to send a message that service members deserve better, that you can't point guns at people and claim it was a mistake, that actions have consequences. I returned to my seat. The courtroom was silent. Judge Chen reviewed the sentencing guidelines. Mrs. Morrison, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon carries a potential sentence of 2 to 10 years. The prosecution has recommended 7 years. The defense has requested probation or minimal incarceration. She looked at Michelle. Mrs. Morrison, you pointed a loaded weapon at a decorated service member in his own home after betraying your marriage vows. You manufactured false abuse allegations against him while he served overseas. You showed no remorse until you were facing consequences. This court cannot and will not tolerate such actions. I hereby sentence you to 7 years in the state correctional facility. You will be eligible for parole after serving 5 years, but that's not guaranteed. Parole will depend on your behavior and completion of rehabilitation programs. Michelle's knees buckled. Sandra caught her. Carol wailed in the gallery. Paul just stared. Mrs. Morrison, you did this to yourself. Bailiff, please remand the defendant into custody. Court officers led Michelle away. She was sobbing, barely able to walk. I watched her go and felt nothing but satisfaction. 2 months passed. Emma and Tyler adjusted to their new normal. I took the non-deployment position I'd requested, a logistics planning role at the base that kept me home every night. Dinner at 6, homework help, bedtime stories, stability. Then Michelle's appellate lawyer called. Captain Morrison, this is David Walsh. I'm handling Michelle's appeal. I wanted to discuss... No. Excuse me? No. Whatever you're about to ask for, the answer is no. Captain Morrison, your wife needs resources for a proper appeal. The public defender's office is overworked and... I actually laughed. Let me guess. You want me to contribute money to help Michelle appeal the conviction for assaulting me? She's the mother of your children. She pointed a gun at me. She betrayed me. She tried to destroy me. She's getting exactly what she deserves. We're done here. I hung up. A week later, the social media campaign started. Carol posted first. A long Facebook post about how I was a vindictive monster who'd sent a troubled woman to prison instead of getting her help. How I'd stolen Emma and Tyler from their mother. How I was using my military status to oppress Michelle. Paul shared it. Michelle's sister Karen wrote her own version. Her friends piled on. Some people believed it. I started getting messages, angry comments on old posts. A few of Michelle's friends even showed up at my house to yell at me, calling me heartless and cruel. I documented everything but didn't engage. Then Derek reached out. Derek's message came through Facebook on a Tuesday evening. Simple and direct. Can we meet? I have information you need to hear. I stared at the message for a long time. Derek Paulson, the bearded guy who'd had his hand on Michelle's back that night, the affair partner, the last person I wanted to talk to. But curiosity won out. Coffee tomorrow, 2 p.m. Starbucks on Main Street. I'll be there. I arrived early, positioning myself where I could see the entrance. Derek walked in at exactly 2 p.m. He looked different than I remembered, thinner, tired, wearing a flannel shirt and jeans. He spotted me and approached hesitantly. Captain Morrison, thanks for meeting me. Make it quick. I didn't stand or offer my hand. Derek sat down across from me, fidgeting with his coffee cup. Look, I know you have every reason to hate me. I would too. But I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear me out. You have 5 minutes. He took a deep breath. Michelle told us you were divorced. All of us, me and the other 3 guys who were there that night. She said you were her ex-husband, that the divorce was nasty, and that you'd been stalking her. I felt my blood run cold. She what? She showed us pictures of you. Said you were dangerous. That you'd been showing up at her house uninvited, making threats, and that if you ever appeared, we should help her get you to leave. She said she was terrified of you. My hands clenched into fists under the table. And you believed her? Why wouldn't we? She seemed genuinely scared. She had documentation, or what looked like documentation, restraining order paperwork, texts she claimed were from you. It all seemed legitimate. Derek looked miserable. None of us knew you were deployed. None of us knew you were still married and living in that house. We thought we were helping protect a woman from her abusive ex. That's why you all ran when I showed up. Yeah, we thought you were there to hurt her. When she pulled that gun, we figured... He stopped, shaking his head. We were idiots. We got played. Why are you telling me this now? Because her family is all over social media saying you're the villain, saying you're vindictive and cruel for sending her to prison. And I can't stay quiet anymore. Derek's voice got firmer. What Michelle did to you was calculated. She didn't panic that night. She'd already convinced 4 men that you were a stalker. She'd built this whole alternate reality. She manipulated all of us. She's dangerous, Captain Morrison. What she did to you, she would have done worse if you hadn't stopped her. And her family acting like you're the bad guy? That's insane. I studied Derek for a long moment. You were sleeping with her. Yeah. He had the decency to look ashamed. For about 2 weeks before that night. I thought she was single. The second she got arrested and I found out the truth, That you were her husband, that you were deployed, that she'd lied about everything. I cut contact completely. I need that in writing, all of it. I figured you would. Derek pulled out an envelope. Already done. Sworn statement, notarized. Everything I just told you, plus dates, details, the names of the other 3 guys. I took the envelope. The others will back this up. I already talked to them. They're willing to give statements too. We all feel sick about being used like that. Over the next week, I collected statements from all 4 men. Derek, plus the other 3, Marcus Riley, James Chen, and Todd Washington. Each one detailed how Michelle had lied about being divorced, claimed I was abusive and stalking her, and manipulated them into being her accomplices. I compiled everything into a comprehensive package. The sworn statements, court documents from the trial, the divorce records, financial evidence, the 911 recording, everything that proved the truth. Then I drafted a social media post, factual, unemotional, just the facts. Several people have asked about my ex-wife Michelle Morrison's situation. Here are the facts with documentation attached. 1. I returned from a 6-month military deployment to find Michelle hosting a party with 4 men while our children were away. 2. Michelle pointed my loaded service weapon at my chest. This was witnessed and recorded. 3. Michelle was having an affair and had withdrawn $23,000 in hidden cash. 4. Michelle fabricated abuse allegations against me while I was deployed. No evidence of abuse exists because it never happened. 5. Michelle lied to multiple people, claiming she was divorced and I was stalking her. These men have provided sworn statements. 6. Michelle was convicted by a jury and sentenced to 7 years. All documentation is attached. Draw your own conclusions. I posted it simultaneously on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Attached every document, the statements, court records, even portions of the 911 call. The response was immediate. The harassment stopped within hours. People who'd been sending me nasty messages started deleting their comments. Michelle's friends went silent. Even Carol and Paul stopped posting. Some people apologized, most just quietly unfollowed or blocked me. Derek became an unlikely ally. He sent me a message a few days later. Thank you for not lumping me in with her. I know I was an idiot, but I was a manipulated idiot. If you ever need anything, let me know. We started meeting occasionally for coffee. It was strange at first, but Derek was genuinely remorseful. He'd been used, just like I had, just in a different way. A year after the sentencing, I started dating. Her name was Sarah Chen, a 3rd-grade teacher I met through Emma's school. She was patient, kind, and had no baggage with Michelle's drama because she'd moved to town after everything happened. Our first date was coffee. Our second was dinner. By the 3rd date, I'd told her everything. I laid it all out. The deployment, the betrayal, the gun, the trial, all of it. Sarah listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "That must have been terrifying." It was, but you protected your kids. You did what you had to do. Some people think I went too far. Those people didn't have a gun pointed at them. Sarah reached across the table and took my hand. You survived something traumatic, and you kept your children safe. That's what matters. I introduced her to Emma and Tyler 3 months later. Sarah was amazing with them, natural, warm, never trying too hard. Emma took to her immediately. Tyler was more cautious but warmed up quickly. But then, just when life was settling into something good, Paul and Carol made their move. Richard called me on a Friday afternoon. "Jake, we have a problem. Michelle's parents just filed for grandparents' rights. They're suing for visitation." "On what grounds?" "They're claiming that since Michelle is in prison because of your actions, you're denying them access to their grandchildren. They're arguing they have a right to maintain a relationship with Emma and Tyler." I felt the old anger surge back. After everything they did, the social media campaign, the harassment, that's exactly what we're going to argue. We'll file a motion to dismiss and present evidence of their behavior. This hearing is in 2 months. 2 months to prepare for another legal battle, another fight with Michelle's family. I was exhausted, but I wasn't backing down. The grandparents' rights hearing fell on a cold Thursday morning in March, 2 years after that Friday night. I sat in the courtroom, A different one this time, family court, with Richard beside me and a folder full of evidence. Paul and Carol sat across the aisle with their lawyer, a silver-haired woman named Patricia Moreno. Carol looked older than I remembered, her face lined with stress. Paul stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. Judge Angela Torres presided, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s with a reputation for cutting through nonsense. "This is a petition for grandparents' visitation rights," Judge Torres began. "Ms. Moreno, present your case." Patricia stood. "Your Honor, my clients Paul and Carol Henderson are the maternal grandparents of Emma and Tyler Morrison. They had a close relationship with these children before the unfortunate incident involving their daughter. Since Michelle Morrison's incarceration, Captain Morrison has effectively cut off all contact between the grandparents and the children. My clients are seeking reasonable visitation, perhaps one weekend per month, to maintain this important family bond. Captain Morrison currently allows supervised visits twice per year," Judge Torres noted, reviewing the file. "Which is insufficient, Your Honor. These children need their grandparents, especially during this difficult time when their mother is absent." Judge Torres turned to Richard. "Mr. Chen, your response?" Richard stood, and I could see the controlled intensity in his posture. "Your Honor, my client is willing to demonstrate why increased visitation with Paul and Carol Henderson would not be in the best interests of Emma and Tyler Morrison. May I present evidence?" "Proceed." Richard pulled out the first exhibit, printed social media posts. "Your Honor, after Michelle Morrison was convicted and sentenced, Paul and Carol Henderson launched a coordinated social media campaign against Captain Morrison. Exhibit A shows Carol Henderson's Facebook post claiming Captain Morrison is a vindictive monster who stole the children. Exhibit B shows Paul Henderson sharing posts accusing Captain Morrison of using his military status to oppress their daughter. He laid out more posts, each one more inflammatory than the last. Exhibit C shows messages from Carol Henderson to Emma and Tyler, telling them that their father is keeping them from their mother unfairly, and that Mommy didn't do anything wrong. This directly undermines Captain Morrison's custody and attempts to manipulate the children against their custodial parent." Patricia tried to object. "Your Honor, my clients were upset and grieving. They were actively trying to turn the children against their father," Richard cut in. Exhibit D shows Carol Henderson posting Captain Morrison's home address publicly, leading to harassment. Exhibit E shows multiple instances of Paul and Carol Henderson defending Michelle Morrison's false abuse allegations, even after they were proven false in court. Judge Torres examined each exhibit carefully. "Ms. Moreno, your clients were aware that Mrs. Morrison's abuse allegations were fabricated?" Patricia hesitated. They believed their daughter initially, even after the trial? Even after Michelle Morrison admitted under oath that she'd lied?" Silence. Richard continued. "Your Honor, Paul and Carol Henderson have shown a pattern of behavior that is harmful to Emma and Tyler's well-being. They've attempted to undermine the custodial parent, manipulate the children's perception of events, and publicly harassed Captain Morrison. They've shown no respect for court orders or the truth. Increased visitation would expose the children to continued manipulation and instability." "What about the current supervised visits?" Judge Torres asked. "Twice per year, supervised by a social worker, in a neutral location. Emma and Tyler have shown little interest in maintaining contact. The last visit, Tyler asked to leave after 20 minutes. Emma hasn't asked about her grandparents in over 6 months." Judge Torres turned to Paul and Carol. "Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, do you believe Michelle Morrison was wrongly convicted?" Carol started crying. Paul spoke, his voice strained. "She made mistakes, Your Honor, but 7 years seems—" "That's not what I asked. Do you believe the jury's verdict was correct?" Long pause. Finally, Paul said, "No. We believe Jake provoked her by coming home unexpectedly." "Stop." Judge Torres held up her hand. "Mrs. Morrison pointed a loaded weapon at her husband. A jury convicted her. The evidence was overwhelming. Yet you still believe Captain Morrison is at fault? He could have shown mercy. Mr. Henderson, your daughter committed aggravated assault. Captain Morrison showed appropriate response by calling law enforcement. Your continued defense of her actions and blame toward him demonstrates exactly why Mr. Chen is correct. You pose a risk to those children's emotional well-being." Judge Torres reviewed her notes for a long moment. The courtroom was silent except for Carol's quiet sobbing. I'm denying the petition for increased visitation. The current arrangement of supervised visits twice annually will remain in place. Additionally, I'm issuing a protective order. Mr. and Mrs. Henderson are prohibited from posting about Captain Morrison or the children on social media, from contacting the children outside supervised visits, and from making any statements that undermine Captain Morrison's custody or characterize Michelle Morrison's conviction as unjust. Patricia tried to salvage something. Your Honor, perhaps unsupervised visits. No, this family has been through enough turmoil. These children need stability, not grandparents who will undermine their father and confuse them about their mother's criminal actions. My ruling stands. The gavel came down. Paul and Carol left without looking at me. Carol was still crying. Paul's face was stone. Richard and I walked out together. That's it, he said. No more legal battles. It's done. Finally, life moved forward after that. Emma turned 8, then 9. Tyler grew from a small kid into a lanky preteen. They thrived. Good grades, friends, sports, normal childhood stuff. Sarah and I got married in a small ceremony when Emma was 10. Just close friends, Derek included, and a few family members. Emma was the flower girl. Tyler walked Sarah down the aisle when she asked him to. A year later, Sarah legally adopted Emma and Tyler. They'd asked for it, wanted Sarah to be their real mom legally, not just in their hearts. The adoption hearing was one of the happiest days of my life. They started calling her Mom Sarah to distinguish from Bio Mom, though honestly they rarely mentioned Michelle anymore. She'd become a distant memory, someone who used to be in their lives but wasn't anymore. Michelle's 5-year parole hearing came and went. She was denied. Richard heard through the legal grapevine that Michelle had gotten into multiple fights in prison, failed to complete anger management programs, showed no genuine remorse. She'd likely served the full 7 years. Derek became a genuine friend. We grabbed beers every few weeks, talked about normal stuff, sports, work, life. He'd long since stopped apologizing. We'd both been victims of Michelle's manipulation in different ways. We'd both moved on. 3 years after marrying Sarah, I got promoted to lieutenant colonel. The ceremony was small but meaningful. Sarah, Emma, and Tyler were there. Emma had tears in her eyes when they pinned the rank on my uniform. I'm proud of you, Dad, she whispered. I'd taken a stable logistics position that kept me home every night. I coached Tyler's little league team, helped Emma with algebra homework, made pancakes on Saturday mornings, regular dad stuff. Carol sent a letter 4 years after the hearing, not asking for anything, just apologizing, saying she finally understood what Michelle had done, how wrong Carol had been to defend it, how badly she'd failed me and the kids. She asked if someday, when Emma and Tyler were old enough, they might want to know their grandmother again. I thought about it for weeks. Finally wrote back, when they're 18, they can make that choice themselves. Until then, my answer is no. She wrote back thanking me, said it was more than she deserved. She was right. 5 years after that Friday night, 5 years since I'd walked through my door to find my life in ruins, I stood in my backyard watching Tyler's 11th birthday party. Kids running around, Sarah organizing games, Emma helping serve cake. Derek showed up with a gift, a Lego dinosaur set Tyler had been wanting. Couldn't miss the birthday, he said. Michelle sat in prison with 2 more years minimum on her sentence. No children, no freedom, no future. Her affair partner had abandoned her. Her parents barely visited. Her life was a cell in a prison yard and nothing else. And me? I had everything. A wife who loved me, 2 kids who called me dad and actually meant it, a career I was proud of, a home filled with laughter instead of lies, peace instead of chaos. I watched Sarah chase Tyler around with frosting on her finger, both of them laughing. Emma rolled her eyes but smiled, that teenage exasperation that wasn't really exasperation at all. This was the life Michelle had tried to destroy. This was what I'd fought for. And I'd won. That night, after the kids were asleep and Sarah and I were cleaning up, she found me standing in the kitchen just looking around. You okay? She asked. Yeah. Just thinking about how different things are now. Better, different. So much better. I pulled her close. Thank you. For all of this. For them. For us. You did the hard part, Sarah said. You protected them. You fought for them. I just get to love the family you built. 5 years ago, Michelle pointed a gun at me and tried to take everything. Instead, I took everything from her. Not through revenge. Through justice. And justice properly served gave me a life better than Michelle ever deserved to be part of. I sleep perfectly well at night knowing that. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.